All right, let's jump right in. Have you ever had a simple question pop into your head, and then somehow it ends up completely changing you? That's what we're talking about today. We're going to map out the entire blueprint for how that happens, the architecture of learning, from that first little spark all the way to something that becomes a core part of who you are.
So let's really dig into that. How does a fleeting question, something as simple as "I wonder," transform into a core belief? An embodied truth that doesn't just sit in your head, but actually guides your actions in the real world. That's the mystery we're unpacking today. Okay, so here's our game plan. Think of it like a 5-step journey. First, we've got to prepare the soil. Then we'll look for that spark of curiosity. After that, it's all about wandering and grasping for ideas. Then comes the really tricky part, finding the true essence. And finally, we'll talk about how to go from just knowing something to actually being it.
All right, first up, preparing the soil. Before you can plant anything, you have to get the ground ready, right? It's the exact same with learning. This first step isn't about the knowledge itself. It's all about creating the essential conditions for that knowledge to actually grow. And this idea is so important. The soil is not the seed. It's the condition for growth. Think about it. Without that fertile ground, without the right mindset, even the most brilliant ideas just fizzle out. They can't take root. They just sit on the surface and die.
So what does that look like in practice? Well, rich soil is all about humility, not being totally certain about everything. It's about genuine curiosity, not just conforming to what everyone else thinks. It's about being open. And crucially, it's about avoiding those consensus traps. The lies we tell ourselves that stop us from thinking independently.
Okay, so once our soil is prepared, we're ready to plant the seed. And the way that seed grows into a fully formed idea, well, that happens in 5 key stages. We're going to walk through curiosity, exploration, comprehension, distillation, and finally, incorporation. And here we go, stage 1, the spark of curiosity. This is where it all begins. Every act of learning, whether it's a kid asking why for the 100th time or a scientist wondering what if, it's all lit by the same match. It's that incredible, restless pull towards whatever's just over the horizon. And this quote from D. Graham Burnett just nails it. To be human is not to have answers. It is to have questions and to live with them. Think about that. A computer can give you a million answers, but that spark of wondering, the ability to even form the question, that's what makes us human. That is the real starting line. What's really interesting is that curiosity often feels more like a capture than a choice. We don't always decide what we're interested in. Sometimes an idea just grabs you. It hijacks your attention, and boom, all of a sudden, you're on a completely new path you never planned to take. So once that curious spark is lit, we get into this really cool 2-part dance. First, you've got the journey outward, to go gather all the stuff. And then there's the journey inward, to try and make sense of it all. This is the phase of wandering and grasping. Let's talk about exploration first. That's our outward journey. And let's be honest, it's supposed to be messy. It's not about being efficient. It's about wandering, sampling different things, and really testing the edges of what you know. The whole point isn't to get the answer immediately. It's to multiply your perspectives and just see what's out there. And just to put that in perspective, think about what this used to be like. Mike Green talks about doing research back in the 70s. It meant literally getting in your car, driving to different libraries, getting on the phone with professors. You were physically piecing together these tiny fragments of information. It was a huge amount of work. And today? Well, today we just type a question into a search bar and get a million results instantly. So yeah, the mechanics are worlds apart, but the essence, that fundamental human drive to go looking for answers, to seek out what's hidden, that hasn't changed one bit. So after you've done all that exploring, after you've gathered all those pieces, you start the inward journey. And that's comprehension. This is that amazing aha moment. It's when you suddenly start to see the patterns emerge from all the noise, and you realize, oh, okay, that's how this all fits together. But here's the catch. Real comprehension demands humility. You know that famous line from Socrates, "I know one thing, that I know nothing"? He wasn't just being clever. He was making a really important point. Truly understanding something means accepting that your knowledge is never final. It's always a draft, ready to be revised when new information comes along. Okay, this next stage is absolutely crucial, especially in our modern world. We've explored, we've started to understand, but now we have to get ruthless. It's time to find the true essence by separating the signal from all the noise. Gertrude Stein hit the nail on the head decades ago when she said this. And if it was true then, it's 100 times truer now. We're just flooded with information all day long. And if we don't learn to distill, we just drown. The goal is not to absorb everything. It's to figure out what actually matters. This is where you have to put on your Sherlock Holmes hat. Think about it. When Holmes walks into a room, he doesn't care about 99% of what's there. His genius is his ability to spot the handful of clues that are absolutely essential. And that is exactly what distillation is, ignoring the trivia to find the core truth. And that's why distillation is more than just a mental trick. It's an act of courage. Seriously, it takes real guts to actively throw information away, to decide this isn't important. It's about having the confidence to pare things down until all that's left is the powerful, unshakable essence of the idea. Which brings us to the final stage. And honestly, this is the most important one of all. We've got our distilled truth, that core idea. But now what? Now we have to actually live it. This is the big leap from just knowing something to truly being it. Because at the end of the day, it's not the insight that matters, it's what you do with it. An insight that leads to zero action? That's just expensive trivia. Yeah, it might make you sound smart, but if it doesn't change your behavior, what's the point? It's completely useless. And that's the whole point of this entire process, to take a truth that you simply know and transform it into a truth that you are. It moves from being an idea in your head to something that's just part of your DNA, reflected in everything you do. But look, this final step doesn't happen overnight. It's not a magic switch. It takes, as Calvin Coolidge put it, persistence and determination. You have to keep at it, day in and day out. You practice, you mess up, you correct, you try again. Until that idea isn't something you have to remember anymore. It's just who you are. So there you have it, the entire architecture of learning, from preparing the soil all the way to embodying knowledge. We've given you the blueprint. But a blueprint is just a piece of paper until someone decides to build something. So now the question comes back to you. What will you build?